How do you ensure riots in the street will directly affect every single American? By using an old communist tactic that nearly always guarantees results for those flooding the streets. We'll look at this timeless tactic to help you make sense out of all this chaos in this episode of Activate America. In our 1966 documentary, Anarchy USA, the John Birch Society demonstrated the communist tactic of pressure from above and pressure from below to generate engineered consensus. One of the original writers of the Anarchy USA script, Mr. G. Edward Griffin, discussed this in an article he wrote in 1969. Now let me highlight some of it for you. He wrote, "Would-be tyrants become con artists, mastering the art of convincing free men to willingly accept a totalitarian agenda. How?" he asks. "By making it appear that almost everyone supports that agenda, from public officials to the masses in the streets. Public perception is all that matters." That strategy is called revolutionary parliamentarianism. William Z. Foster, national chairman of the American Communist Party from 1933 to 1957, identified this strategy in his 1932 book, Toward a Soviet America. The strategy involves a political pincers movement of applying political pressure from above and from below. A detailed explanation of this strategy appeared in the 1950s in a textbook used by the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia and was used in a training program on how to seize power in countries that have representative governments. Pressure from above is created when agents inside the targeted government bring forward recommendations for new big government/police state legislation. Does that sound familiar given the current state we're in? Congress is currently playing this role with its police reform bills. Mr. Griffin continued, "This will be promoted as a solution to some kind of national or international problem, but this will be a ruse. The hidden objective will be to expand the power of the bureaucracy and to move the country closer to the ultimate goal of total government." He continues, "Pressure from below is created when agents working in the media and inside grassroots organizations cooperate to create the appearance of popular demand for the proposed legislation. Naturally, the rank and file members of those organizations must be kept focused on the pretended humanitarian objectives. They must not be allowed to see the totalitarian objective." So as we say, the media and several radical leftist organizations, including Antifa, BLM, the Democratic Socialists of America, the Sunrise Movement, Indivisible, the Revolutionary Communist Party, the Communist Party USA, California Forward, and Color of Change, certainly fit this role, and each are playing their part, along with many others. As Mr. Griffin further explained, the majority of the population knows nothing about all of this and is caught in the middle. They look above and see government spokesmen calling for legislation for some new expansion of their power, and they look below with the help of the mass media and see angry demonstrators shouting for the same thing. They say to themselves, has everyone gone crazy or have I? They may still be in the majority by far, but they don't know it. They think they are hopelessly outnumbered, and then they bow to what they believe is the democratic will of the majority. And here is where Mr. Griffin really hits it out of the park. He wrote, "The process affects legislators as well. Since many of them have no higher goal than to stay in office, it is easy for them to bend to the artificially created pressures. They willingly pass the legislation while claiming, and sometimes even believing, that they are merely responding to the will of the people. With that," Mr. Griffin writes, "the process starts over again with recommendations for new legislation from above, new demands from below, and new capitulation by the legislature. Through this strategy, the nation gradually becomes totalitarian, and the masses are convinced it is of their own choosing." Again, Even though this was written decades ago, we can certainly identify this very same tactic being applied today. The New American magazine is in the process of publishing its July 6th special report, What's Really Behind the Riots. The cover story is written by Alex Newman, who documents the motive and the players in these riots. He wrote, "In reality, all of these slogans and issues are simply the cover story. Leftists have long used the infamous slogan, 'The issue is never the issue is always the revolution.' That could not be more obvious today, as those seeking to remake America use the long-time communist strategy of applying pressure from below and pressure from above to trap Americans in their pincer grip to reconstruct America. As this article will prove, the deep state figures behind the scenes and the dangerous extremism of the communist revolutionaries they are funding are barely even concealed, and they know exactly what they are doing. The revolutionists and their backers, billionaire globalists such as George Soros and the Rockefeller dynasty, are attempting to undermine civilization, limited government, rule of law, Christianity, traditional morality, free markets, and individual liberty by equating them all with white supremacy and structural racism. Anyone and everyone who might dare to defend any of these bedrock principles of American society, including the founding ideals such as all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with God-given rights, are by definition racists, defenders of white supremacists, and must be destroyed according to the narrative. Yet, we got to say, as Mr. Newman points out, this is backfiring with many black Americans, as black voter approval for President Trump recently polled at over 40%, and this is weeks after the death of Mr. George Floyd. Mr. Newman quotes from Bishop E.W. Jackson, a prominent black Christian leader, in response to the unrest over Mr. Floyd's death. Bishop Jackson stated, "No people of African heritage anywhere on earth are more free or better off than we who are blessed to be Americans. America is still the last best hope for all of us, regardless of race. It is time to come together across all racial and cultural lines to renew the American vision of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is within our grasp if we do not allow the radical elements among us to destroy it forever. There are those who would like to push us over the cliff into chaos. They think they will be there to pick up the pieces and to create a socialist utopia, but history proves it will be a totalitarian nightmare. Let us, as free black Americans, pull back from the precipice, push back against the anarchists, and embrace the legacy of freedom, justice, and hope for ourselves and the generations to follow." And to this we wholeheartedly say amen, and extend a hand to our fellow Americans to protect the system that is supposed to protect our God-given rights. There is no reason for Republicans in Congress to cave into demands for police reform, other than ensuring the federal government has zero ties with local and state law enforcement. Those in state and local government need to support their local police and keep them independent from the federal government, which then keeps them accountable to the communities they serve. Any reform needs to come from local and state, especially in terms of asset forfeiture or other incentive programs that encourage abuse of constitutional rights. The special report of the magazine will be available on June 22nd, so please make it a priority to buy extra copies to distribute to those in your community, helping them to see the real organization and motive behind all of this chaos. This may be especially helpful for those of you whose city councils are considering defunding or replacing the police. Check out our latest tools at our Support Your Local Police action page. Links are in the description. Will you help us to protect freedom over chaos? Until next time, this is Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society saying, stay active, everyone.